Imagine earning more in a single month than most people will see in their entire lifetime and spending every single dollar of it. That's not a hypothetical, that's Davido's reality. In a casual live stream conversation that felt more like a conversation between friends than a formal interview, one of Africa's biggest music stars dropped a figure so staggering it stopped the internet in its tracks. $200,000, $300,000 every single month. And according to Davido himself, that number doesn't include his wife, it doesn't include his family, it doesn't include the luxury cars, the jewelry, the mansions, or the private jets that have become synonymous with his name, just his personal expenses. The moment the clip surfaced, social media erupted. Some people called it flexing, others called it honesty, but very few people stopped to ask the question that actually matters. What does it really cost to be Davido? What does it take to maintain a career that has taken a young man from Lagos to the biggest stages on earth? And what does that kind of spending say about the hidden machinery behind Afrobeats' global explosion? This is the story of a number, but more than that, it's the story of what that number represents. The price of being Africa's most visible music star, the woman who keeps him grounded, and the journey that brought them both to this moment. It started like any other live stream. Davido, relaxed, wearing a
Probably
simple
like
outfit, sitting across from
200, 300.
DavreITV in what looked like a comfortable studio setting.
That's
The
minus buying jewelry
conversation
or
was
buying car.
flowing.
No,
They
minus your
were
wife.
talking about
I don't minus
life,
my
music,
wife and my
family,
household.
the usual topics
Hey, bro.
artists
Hey.
discuss when they let their
Bro,
guard
hey.
down. Then someone asked about money,
That's why.
not in an aggressive way, just a natural
And I
question
just want
about
to
what it
try
costs
to
to
tell
live the life Davido lives.
W.
And Davido,
Cheater.
in that
Why is the
signature
chat
way
like
of his, direct,
this? This video will
unfiltered, almost casual, gave an answer that nobody was prepared for. He said he spends between $200,000 and $300,000 every month on himself alone. He made it clear that figure doesn't touch his wife, doesn't touch his children, doesn't touch the cars he buys, doesn't touch the jewelry he collects. It's just what it costs to be Davido on a daily basis. The host's reaction said everything: a pause, a laugh, a moment of genuine disbelief. Because when you break that down, we're talking about roughly 150 million to 172 million CFA francs every 30 days for one person's operational life. And here's what made it land even harder: Davido wasn't bragging, he wasn't waving a receipt or flashing a bank statement. He was explaining, he was contextualizing, he was trying to help people understand that the life they see on Instagram and music videos comes with a price tag most people never consider. Within hours, the clip was everywhere: Twitter timelines, Instagram stories, WhatsApp groups, TikTok reaction videos. Nigerian Twitter, in particular, did what it does best: it turned a single sentence into a national conversation. Some people did the math. They calculated that Davido's monthly personal spend could buy a luxury apartment in Lekki. It could fund a small business. It could pay university fees for dozens of students. It could change lives. Others pushed back. They argued that judging an artist's spending without understanding their business model is like criticizing a Formula One driver for buying expensive tires. The car doesn't move without them. The show doesn't happen without the infrastructure. But the conversation that emerged wasn't really about whether Davido should or shouldn't spend that money. It was about something deeper. It was about the invisible world that exists behind the glamour of Afrobeat stardom. The world of teams, logistics, security, travel, and the relentless machinery required to keep a global career running. because Davido didn't just drop a number, he opened a window. Here's the part most people miss when they hear that figure. Davido didn't break down the cost. He didn't hand anyone an itemized list. But anyone who understands the music industry at the level he operates knows exactly where that money goes. Start with the team. A global artist doesn't travel alone. Davido has managers, personal assistants, stylists, hair and makeup artists, videographers, photographers, security personnel, and logistics coordinators. Some of these people are on monthly retainers, others are paid per project, but they all need to be compensated at a level that matches the brand they're representing. Then there's security. This isn't optional for someone of Davido's profile. In Nigeria, high profile entertainers face genuine risks: kidnapping threats, armed robbery, home invasions. Davido has spoken before about the dangers that come with fame in a country where wealth disparity is stark and visible. His security detail isn't a luxury, it's survival. Add accommodation. When Davido travels for performances, and he travels constantly, he's not checking into budget hotels. He's staying in suites that cost thousands of dollars per night. His crew needs rooms too. Multiply that across dozens of international trips per year, and the numbers start making sense. Transport is another category entirely. While Davido didn't include his car purchases in that monthly figure, the operational costs of moving him and his team, private drivers, fuel for convoys, flights, ground transportation in foreign cities add up fast. Then there's rehearsals, production, equipment, wardrobe, the cost of putting on the kind of shows that have sold out arenas from London to Dubai to New York. Every performance requires preparation. Every performance requires investment. And those investments happen whether the show is a stadium or a private event. Davido himself hinted at this during the interview. He said his expenses increase depending on his schedule, especially when he's traveling or working outside Nigeria. That one line tells you everything. The $200,000 to $300,000 isn't a fixed vanity budget, it's a baseline. When he's on tour, when he's recording internationally, when he's juggling multiple projects across time zones, that number climbs even higher. And we haven't even touched the technology side. Streaming platforms, digital marketing, social media management, content creation, maintaining relevance in 2026 requires a digital infrastructure that costs money every single day. So when you hear $300,000 a month, don't picture a man throwing cash at nightclubs. Picture a small corporation. Picture a CEO running an organization where the product is a human being, and that human being needs to be protected, moved, dressed, rehearsed, and presented to the world in a way that justifies his position at the top of an entire genre. That's what Davido was really talking about, not excess, operations. But here's where the story gets truly interesting. Because while Davido is out here spending $300,000 a month on the machinery of stardom, the woman he chose to marry has a completely different relationship with money. Davido has spoken about this before, and it came up again in the context of this recent revelation. He met Chioma Roland when they were both students. They dated for over a decade before finally making it official. And through all of that time, through the fame, the fortune, the controversies, the tragedies, one quality about Chioma never changed. She saves, she invests, she doesn't spend carelessly. Davido has said this openly. He's praised her for taking the money he gave her and putting it to work rather than blowing it on things that lose value. In a world where celebrity relationships often collapse under the weight of financial mismanagement and competing egos, Chioma's approach to money represented something rare: stability, discipline, long term thinking. Think about the contrast for a moment. On one side, you have a man whose monthly operational costs could fund a small company. On the other, you have a woman who sees money as a tool for security rather than a symbol of status. And somehow, against every odd that celebrity culture throws at relationships, they made it work. Their journey to marriage wasn't straightforward. They got engaged in 2019, welcomed their son Ifeanyi, and then life intervened in the most devastating way possible. In November 2022, 3-year-old Ifeanyi drowned in the swimming pool at Davido's Banana Island mansion while the parents were away. The tragedy sent shockwaves through African entertainment and forced the couple into a period of intense grief and withdrawal from public life. But they endured. In October 2023, they welcomed a set of twins, a moment of joy that felt almost miraculous given what they had lost. And in June 2024, they finally married in a traditional ceremony in Lagos that brought together political heavyweights, entertainment royalty, and the kind of guest list that only Davido could assemble. Former President Olusegun Obasanjo was there, Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu, the Uni of Ife. It was less a wedding and more a state event. One radio personality famously warned other artists not to bother releasing music that week because nothing would break through the noise of #Chivido 2024. Then, in August 2025, they held a second white wedding in Miami, even more lavish, attended by billionaire Aliko Dangote and Afrobeats legend D'banj. By that point, they had already had a reported secret marriage around late 2022 or early 2023, making this their third ceremonial union. Through all of this, Chioma remained the constant, the woman who saved what the world watched her husband spend, the woman who stayed through public infidelity allegations, through the loss of a child, through the pressure of being married to one of the most visible men on the continent. And Davido noticed. He noticed enough to make it part of his public narrative. The man who spends $300,000 a month married a woman who taught him that money means more when it's handled with care. That's not just a love story, that's a financial philosophy. To understand why Davido's spending revelation matters, you have to understand where he came from. Davido didn't inherit a music career. He was born into privilege. His father, Adedeji Adeleke, is a billionaire businessman, but he chose a path that required him to build his own name from scratch. And he did it by leaning into something that was controversial at the time. He made his wealth visible. Before Davido, Nigerian artists were more reserved about displaying money. There was a cultural hesitation, a sense that flaunting wealth was vulgar or inviting trouble. Davido changed that. He bought the cars, he rented the jets, he threw the parties. He called himself 001, the number one, and he backed it up with a lifestyle that matched the claim. It wasn't just ego, it was branding. In a genre that was still fighting for global recognition, Davido understood that perception mattered. If the world was going to take Afrobeats seriously, its biggest stars needed to look like they belonged on the same stage as American and European artists. The luxury wasn't an end in itself, it was a signal, and it worked. Fall became the longest charting Nigerian pop song in Billboard history. If dominated streaming platforms worldwide. Unavailable and Feel cemented his status as an artist who could consistently deliver global hits. He sold out the O2 Arena in London. He performed at the World Cup final. He collaborated with artists from Chris Brown to Nicki Minaj to NAS. But every level of success brought new costs. The bigger the stages, the larger the team. The more international the audience, the more complex the logistics. The higher the profile, the greater the security needs. Davido didn't just rise to the top of Afrobeats. He expanded the ceiling, and expanding ceilings requires materials. That's the context in which his $300,000 monthly figure exists. It's not the spending of a man who got lucky and is burning through inheritance. It's the operating budget of someone who built an industry around himself and now has to maintain it. And here's something else worth considering. Davido has been nominated for multiple Grammy Awards. He's accumulated billions of streams across digital platforms. He's one of the most awarded artists in African music history. But streaming revenue, even at that scale, doesn't cover $300,000 a month in personal operational costs, which means the music is just one pillar. Endorsements, investments, business ventures, and strategic partnerships are what make the math work. Davido isn't just an artist, he is a business, and businesses have overhead. When he told DavreITV that number, he wasn't just sharing a fun fact. He was revealing the economics of a career that very few people understand. But no story about Davido is complete without acknowledging the storms he's weathered. Because while the $300,000 figure is what people are talking about now, the real story of Davido's life over the past few years has been about survival, professional, personal, and emotional. The cheating allegations were relentless. In 2023, Anita Brown, an American woman, posted screenshots of messages allegedly showing Davido asking her to terminate a pregnancy. The screenshots spread across social media within hours. The details were explicit. The embarrassment was public. And the question on everyone's mind was the same. Would Chioma finally leave? She didn't. And that decision drew both admiration and criticism. Some people praised her for prioritizing her family and her long term commitment over temporary scandal. Others accused her of tolerating disrespect for the sake of financial security. The debate raged for weeks, and Davido largely stayed silent. Then there was the ongoing dynamic with Sophia Momodu, the mother of his first child, Imade. Their co-parenting relationship has been a recurring source of public drama and legal disputes, with both sides airing grievances on social media at various points. For an artist whose brand is built on family and loyalty, these public conflicts created tension that no amount of money could buy away. And then the tragedy that overshadowed everything else. In November 2022, Davido and Chioma's 3-year-old son Ifeanyi drowned in the swimming pool at their Banana Island home. The details were heartbreaking. The parents were reportedly away at an event. Staff were present, but somehow the child found his way to the water. By the time he was discovered, it was too late. The grief was unimaginable. Davido disappeared from public life for months. Social media went dark. Music releases stopped. The man who had built a career on being everywhere suddenly vanished. When he returned, he was different, more measured, more private, more deliberate about what he shared and when. The birth of the twins in October 2023 felt like a turning point, a sign that life could offer second chances even after the darkest moments. So when Davido sits in that DavreITV studio and casually mentions spending $300,000 a month, he's not just talking about money. He's talking about a life that has been tested in ways most people can't imagine. A life where the stakes are higher because the losses have been deeper. The spending isn't just operational, it's psychological. It's the cost of maintaining a public face when the private reality has been so much harder than anyone knows. Davido's revelation did something unexpected. It forced the Afrobeats industry to confront a conversation it had been avoiding. What does it actually cost to be a global African artist? For years, the narrative around Afrobeats has been about success. The streaming numbers, the sold out shows, the Grammy nominations, the collaborations with Western superstars. What hasn't been discussed as openly is the financial infrastructure required to sustain that success. Davido's $300,000 monthly figure isn't an outlier, it's a benchmark. Other artists at his level, Wizkid, Burna Boy, Tiwa Savage, Yemi Alade, operate with similar overheads, even if they don't discuss them publicly. The security, the teams, the travel, the production costs, these are universal requirements for global careers. But here's the problem: the industry doesn't have a system for supporting these costs in a sustainable way. Record labels in Nigeria and across Africa have historically underinvested in artist development. Many deals are structured around advances that artists are expected to recoup through performance fees and endorsements rather than through music sales or streaming revenue. The result is a system where artists are under constant pressure to perform, to tour, to stay visible, because the moment they stop, the money stops. Davido's spending revelation, whether he intended it or not, exposed the fragility beneath the glamour. If it costs $300,000 a month just to maintain your personal operations, how much do you need to earn to break even? How many shows do you need to book? How many endorsements do you need to secure? What happens if you get sick? What happens if a tour gets cancelled? These aren't questions most fans think about when they're dancing to Unavailable at a club, but they're the questions that keep artists awake at night. And they raise a bigger question about the future of Afrobeats. As the genre continues its global expansion, will the industry develop the financial infrastructure to support its stars? Will artists be able to build sustainable careers, or will they burn out under the weight of costs they can't control? Davido can afford $300,000 a month because he's Davido. He's been at the top for over a decade. He has diversified income streams. He has a family with generational wealth behind him. But what about the next generation of artists? The ones who are watching him and thinking that Afrobeat stardom is a guaranteed path to riches? His revelation is a warning disguised as a flex. The view from the top is incredible, but the climb is expensive, and the ledge is narrower than it looks. Within 24 hours of the DavreITV clip going viral, the reactions had sorted themselves into distinct categories. The celebrators were the loudest. On X and Instagram, fans posted the clip with captions about Davido's levels and 001 status. For them, the revelation wasn't problematic, it was aspirational. It was proof that an African artist could operate at the same financial altitude as American pop stars. It was validation of a dream they were living vicariously. The calculators came next. These were the people who broke down what $300,000 could buy in Nigerian terms: a luxury apartment in Lekki, a fleet of Toyota Camrys for a transport business, university education for 50 students, a small hospital wing. The implicit message: this is wasteful, this is excessive, this is what inequality looks like when it's wearing designer clothes. The defenders pushed back. They argued that judging an artist's spending without understanding their business model is ignorance masquerading as moral superiority. They pointed out that Davido's spending creates jobs for his team, for the industries that serve him, for the economy that benefits when he brings international attention to Nigerian music. They noted that his taxes, however structured, contribute to government revenue. They reminded everyone that Davido has a long history of philanthropy, from donating to orphanages to funding educational initiatives. The industry analysts offered a more nuanced take. They saw the revelation as a teaching moment, a rare glimpse into the economics of a career that most people only see from the outside. They used the moment to educate younger artists about the importance of financial literacy, team building, and sustainable business practices. And then there were the skeptics, the ones who wondered if the number was accurate, the ones who pointed out that Davido has a well documented history of exaggeration and showmanship, the ones who asked if he's really spending $300,000 a month on personal expenses. Why is he telling us? What's the strategic value of this revelation? That last question is worth sitting with, because in the world of celebrity, nothing is accidental. Every public statement is calculated. Every revelation serves a purpose. Davido has been in this game too long to simply blot out a sensitive financial detail without understanding the consequences. Maybe he wanted to normalize the conversation about artists' finances. Maybe he wanted to remind the world that his success is built on work, not luck. Maybe he wanted to position himself as transparent in an industry known for secrecy. Or maybe, and this is the most human explanation, he was just being Davido. Unfiltered, direct. The same guy who once gave away $1 million at a club because he felt like it. The same guy who proposed to his girlfriend in a music video because he wanted the world to witness it. Sometimes the simplest explanation is the truest one. He was asked a question, he answered it honestly, and the internet did what the internet does. There's one more layer to this story that can't be ignored, because while everyone is talking about Davido's money, the real transformation in his life over the past 2 years hasn't been financial, it's been relational. Davido married Chioma Rowland, officially, publicly. After more than a decade together, multiple breakups, public scandals, the loss of a child, and enough drama to fill a Netflix series, they finally made it legal. The traditional wedding in June 2024 was a spectacle, but it was also a statement. Davido could have kept things private. He could have had a small ceremony and avoided the cameras. Instead, he turned it into a national event. He invited the most powerful people in Nigeria. He made sure the world was watching. And then he did it again in Miami in August 2025. A white wedding, even bigger, even more star-studded. Billionaire Aliko Dangote in attendance. Former Senate President Bukola Saraki, Dibanj. The kind of guest list that signals not just a marriage, but an alliance. Why does this matter to the spending story? Because marriage changed Davido's financial picture. Before, his money was his own. He could spend it however he wanted, answer to no one, and deal with the consequences privately. Now, he has a partner, a wife, a family unit that includes not just Chioma, but their children, the twins born in 2023. Imade from his previous relationship, and the memory of Ifeanyi, who will always be part of their story. Chioma's influence on his financial behavior has been subtle but real. Davido has spoken about her saving habits, her investment mindset, her refusal to spend carelessly. These aren't just cute anecdotes, they're indicators of a shift in how Davido thinks about money. The man who once defined himself by what he could buy is now slowly defining himself by what he can build. The $300,000 monthly figure is still there. The lifestyle hasn't disappeared, but the context has changed. It's no longer just about Davido. It's about the family he's building, the legacy he's creating, the future he's trying to secure. And maybe that's the most important thing to take from this entire story. Not the number, not the cars, or the jets, or the jewelry, but the fact that behind all of it, there's a man who lost a child, found love again, built a family, and is still standing at the top of an industry that chews people up and spits them out. The money is impressive. The survival is remarkable. So, what do we do with a number like $300,000 a month? We can judge it, we can celebrate it, we can use it as evidence of everything that's wrong with celebrity culture or everything that's possible when African talent meets global opportunity. We can debate whether it's too much, whether it's honest, whether it matters at all. But here's what I keep coming back to. Davido didn't have to say it. He could have deflected, joked, changed the subject. Instead, he gave an answer that was specific, surprising, and completely on brand for a man who has built his career on being unapologetically visible. And in doing so, he opened a window into a world that most people will never see. The world of global Afrobeat stardom, the world of teams and logistics and security and production costs that make the music possible. The world where being 001 isn't just a title, it's a job description with a price tag. He also, intentionally or not, reminded us that the people we put on pedestals are still people. They have bills, they have stress, they have relationships that survive despite the pressure of public life. They have losses that no amount of money can heal. They have partners who save while they spend, who ground while they fly, who remind them that money is a tool, not a trophy. Davido spends $300,000 a month. Chioma says what he gives her. Their twins are growing up in a world of luxury built on a foundation of tragedy and resilience. And somewhere in Lagos, a young artist is watching this story unfold, dreaming of the day when their own monthly expenses become a national conversation. That's the real story, not the number, but what the number represents. The cost of a dream, the price of staying at the top, and the quiet, stubborn hope that somehow, against all odds, the dream is worth it.